betrayal, deception, revenge. What you're about to hear is not fiction. I'm Booze. And every video on this channel is a confession, a scar, a buried truth. Subscribe if you're brave enough to hear the whole story. The day they threw me out of my father's house, the California sky looked like it was on fire. Not in color, but in silence. The kind of silence that burns. The kind that tells you the world you knew no longer exists. My father had been dead for 6 days. 6 days since the machines went quiet in that white hospital room in Santa Barbara. 6 days since I held his hand and felt it grow colder minute by minute as the life that built our family's fortune finally slipped away. He was 73, a man who built everything from nothing, from a one-man construction company in the 70s to a real estate empire worth nearly $10 million. He taught me to fix things, not to beg, to work quietly, not to shout. And maybe that was my first mistake, being too quiet, because silence doesn't win you wars. It just helps others plot against you in peace. The will. When I walked into the law office that morning, my father's lawyer, a gray old man named Mr. Halpern, was already there. My older brother Gregory sat beside his wife Elena, her manicured fingers wrapped around his arm like a trophy. My sister-in-law didn't even look at me. Not directly, anyway. Just the occasional glance that said, "You don't belong here." Gregory was everything I wasn't. Loud, charming, the kind of man who filled every room and believed the world owed him for showing up. He'd been father's favorite once before the money started talking louder than blood. We were supposed to read the will that day, to divide the estate. I didn't expect much. Maybe a piece of land, a car, a memory. But I didn't expect what came next either. Halpern's voice trembled slightly as he opened the document. According to the last will and testament of Mr. Raymond Carter, signed March 11th of this year, the entirety of his estate, valued at $800,000, is hereby left to his eldest son, Gregory Carter, and his wife, Elena Carter. I froze. No mention of me. Not one word. Just silence. Gregory reached over, patted my shoulder, like a king granting mercy. "Dad always said you weren't built for business, Brad. You've got a good heart, but this world isn't for you." Elena smiled thin and polished. "It's for the best. You're free now." Free. That word hung in the air like poison. Halpern avoided my eyes. His fingers shook slightly as he folded the papers back into the folder. I saw something then. A flicker of guilt, or maybe fear. Something wasn't right. The house that wasn't mine. That evening I returned to the house on the hill. The one my father built brick by brick, where I learned to ride a bike, where my mother's laughter still echoed through the halls. I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. But when I arrived, the locks had been changed. A security guard, someone Gregory hired, stood at the door. "I'm sorry, sir. You're not allowed on the property anymore." "Not allowed," I said, my voice barely audible. "This is my home." He shook his head, eyes downcast. "Not anymore." And there, under the dim porch light, I saw the sign taped to the gate. "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted." My father's name had already been replaced. The night of the fire. That night I drove aimlessly along the Pacific Coast Highway, the waves crashing against the rocks below like a heartbeat I couldn't silence. I parked near Point Doom, where my father used to take me fishing as a kid. I sat there for hours, the ocean in front of me, the past behind me. When I closed my eyes, I could still hear his voice. "Don't let them decide who you are, Brad. You fix things, remember. But how do you fix betrayal?" I didn't drink that night. Didn't cry either. I just sat and watched the moon burn through the fog, and in that stillness, something inside me shifted. I realized I wasn't broken, just unfinished. And maybe silence wasn't weakness. Maybe it was a weapon I hadn't yet learned to use. Seeds of doubt. Over the next few days, something kept bothering me. That flicker in Halpern's eyes when he read the will. The trembling hands. The date. March 11th. My father had been in the hospital since early February, barely conscious. There was no way he could have signed anything in March. His right hand was paralyzed from the stroke. I drove to the hospital, found Nurse Lynn, the one who'd taken care of him the last few weeks. When I asked about that date, she frowned. Signed a will in March. That's impossible. He couldn't even hold a pen by then. Her words hit like thunder. I asked her if there was any record. Video, visitor logs, anything. She hesitated, then whispered, Elena came by that week. Twice. She said it was about paperwork. She had a lawyer with her, and there it was. The first crack in their perfect story. The plan. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I just watched. Gregory moved into the house within a week. Sold off 2 properties my father had owned. Closed the foundation he had promised to keep running. Elena began redecorating everything, turning my father's legacy into her showroom. They thought they'd won. But revenge, I realized, isn't about rage. It's about patience. It's about letting them build their own trap, one lie at a time, until all you have to do is pull the floor out from under them. I started gathering everything: old documents, email trails, voice memos, even my father's medical reports. I spent nights in a rented apartment in downtown Los Angeles, learning about estate law, forgery, and trusts. I wasn't rich, but I still had my mind and time, and both were sharper than they ever knew. A visit to the lawyer. 2 months later, I went back to see Mr. Halpern. He looked older, thinner. His hands trembled more than before. Brad, you shouldn't be here. I know, I said, but I need to ask you something. Did my father really sign that will? His eyes darted to the closed door, then to the floor. Silence. They said they'd ruin me, he whispered finally. Gregory, he made me sign the witness papers. Said it was your father's wish. Was it? No, he said, barely breathing. It wasn't. There it was. The truth. Quiet. Small. But real. The quiet storm. I didn't rush. I didn't scream. I walked out of that office and into the sunlight like a man reborn. They thought I'd disappear, but I wasn't gone. I was just getting started. Over the next year, I built something from scratch. A property tech startup in San Francisco. Small at first, then growing faster than I imagined. Investors loved it. By year 2, I had enough capital and connections to enter the same real estate market Gregory thought he ruled. I watched his company from afar, the Carter Group, sink slowly under its own greed. Bad deals, lawsuits, Elena's extravagant spending. I didn't need to destroy them yet. They were doing that for me. The letter. One evening, as I was reviewing acquisition papers, I received an email, unsigned, anonymous. It had one attachment, a scanned copy of a different will. My father's real one. The signature was dated January 14th, 2 months before his death. And this time the name Brad Carter was right there, as the primary heir. It was notarized, witnessed, and legal. The sender unknown, but I didn't need to know who, because now I had what I needed. Not just proof, but power. Ending of Chapter 1. As I looked out the window of my San Francisco apartment that night, the skyline glowed gold under the fog. Somewhere down south in that mansion on the hill, my brother and his wife were drinking champagne, toasting to their empire. They didn't know the clock had started ticking, and that every empire, no matter how rich, eventually burns. Not from fire, but from the cold. I used to believe revenge had to be loud, that it needed to explode to be seen to make the world gasp. But I learned that true revenge is quieter than grief. It starts as a whisper in the back of your mind, the moment you realize you've stopped wanting justice and started designing it. A new beginning. A year had passed since I'd been thrown out of my father's house. In that time, I'd built something unexpected. Nova, a small real estate technology company based in San Francisco. We didn't build houses, we built systems. Data algorithms that predicted property trends, construction costs, and investment returns. Ironically, the kind of system my brother's company, the Carter Group, refused to adapt to. They called it too digital. By year 2, Nova had drawn attention from venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. We weren't huge yet, but we were growing. Fast, clean, and quietly. That was my weapon, quiet. While Gregory flaunted his wealth on magazine covers, I became the shadow he didn't see coming. The crack in their wall. Through a contact in Santa Barbara, I learned that the Carter Group had borrowed heavily to buy new properties, betting on a market that was already cooling. Gregory was old school. He used collateral instead of liquidity. The estate he stole was tied to assets that weren't as solid as he believed. One small push, one shift in valuation, could crumble his whole empire. I smiled the night I learned that. Not because of greed, but because karma doesn't need permission. It just needs patience. I wasn't going to bankrupt him overnight. That would be too easy. No, I wanted him to watch his empire fall apart piece by piece, and never know who pulled the first thread. The first move, I reached out to a private investigator named Maya Vega. She had once worked for corporate intelligence firms, the kind that specialized in due diligence before mergers. I met her at a coffee shop near Union Square. She was in her 40s, sharp eyes, no small talk. So she said, sliding into the booth, "You want dirt on your brother?" "No," I replied. "I want proof of a forgery, and maybe a few of his sins along the way." So she tilted her head. "That's not cheap. Neither is justice." I handed her an envelope. Retainer plus a list of names. Halpern Elena, 2 notaries, and a lawyer named Dennis Rowe. The man Elena had brought to the hospital. Maya looked at the list, then at me. "You're not after money, are you?" "No," I said softly. "Money's what they use to erase me. I'm after memory. Ghosts in the paperwork." 2 weeks later, Maya called. "You were right. The will was fake. Signed in a hospital where your father couldn't have lifted a pen. Notarized by someone who doesn't exist, at least not legally." She paused. The document trail was cleaned up, but not perfectly. Elena's lawyer, Dennis Rowe, filed 2 drafts, one dated January 1 March. The March version's metadata shows digital editing. Digital editing. They'd forged it electronically and printed it to look authentic. "Can we prove it?" I asked. "With the right expert, yes. But I'd wait. Let them feel safe first." Her words sank in like cold rain. Patience again. I thought about my father, about how he used to fix old radios. He'd say, "If you rush the current, you blow the fuse." I understood him now. Revenge was the same. Too much current too soon, and everything burns too fast. The Carter Foundation. Then came my next move. Before his death, my father had established the Carter Foundation, a charity supporting housing for veterans. Gregory shut it down after inheriting the estate, said it was non-profitable. So I reopened it, under a new name, the Raymond Fund. Same mission, same logo, but this time fully digital and transparent. I used my company Nova to partner with real estate developers who cared about sustainable housing. Investors noticed, press noticed, and so did Gregory. One morning my phone buzzed with a call from him, the first in 2 years. "Brad, I saw the news. The Raymond Fund, you're using Dad's name now." His voice was calm but tight, controlled anger. "He'd want his name to stand for something good," I said. "Don't start this again," he hissed. "That charity was mine to handle." "No," I said quietly. "It was his, and now it's back where it belongs." He hung up. That was when I knew the first seed had landed. The party. 2 months later, the Carter Group hosted a grand gala in Los Angeles, a celebration of their expanding portfolio. The kind of event meant to remind the world that Gregory Carter was still on top. So I attended, uninvited. Money buys access. A well-placed donation to the event's main sponsor got me on the guest list. The moment I walked in, the room went silent. Not because they recognized me, but because Elena did. Her smile faltered. She looked stunning, as always. A silver dress, diamonds that could blind you. But beneath the glitter, her eyes flickered like a cornered animal. "Brad," she said, voice dripping with false warmth. "Didn't expect to see you here. I heard there'd be free champagne." She laughed, brittle. Gregory appeared beside her, his hand on her waist, his jaw tight. "Still trying to prove something, little brother?" "No," I said. Just here to watch. He smirked. Watch what? The empire you forged melt. He didn't get it. Not yet. But he would. Behind the curtain. The following week, Maya sent me something. A financial report, confidential, showing that the Carter Group had inflated its asset values to secure new bank loans. Falsified appraisals, forged client letters, manipulated spreadsheets. It wasn't just illegal, it was suicidal. Maya said, if this goes public, it's fraud. At best, they lose everything. At worst, prison. I didn't send it to the press. Not yet. Instead, I sent one copy, anonymously, to Gregory's biggest investor, Lindholm Partners. 3 days later, Gregory's face appeared on Bloomberg. Carter Group faces internal audit amid valuation discrepancies. It was subtle. No accusations, just questions. But questions are like termites. They don't destroy overnight, they hollow out from within. The mirror. For the first time, Gregory called again. No anger this time. Just confusion. Fear, maybe. Brad, if you have something against me, say it. Don't play games. I'm not playing, Greg. I'm rebuilding what you broke. You think you're better than me? You think this charity crap makes you noble? No, I said. It makes me free. There was silence. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. You'll regret this. But he was wrong. Because regret was his weapon, not mine. Mine was truth. And truth doesn't regret. The fall of Halpern. Around that time, I got a message from Maya again. Mr. Halpern, the lawyer who read the forged will, had died suddenly. A stroke. No investigation. No autopsy. Just gone. His office files were sealed, but Maya found a backup. A USB hidden in his desk drawer. Inside were voice memos. In one of them, he said, if anything happens to me, it's because of what I know about the Carter will. Gregory and Elena forced me to alter the records. I can't live with it much longer. My hands shook as I listened. Part of me wanted to take it to the police right away. But another part, the colder part, whispered Chanyet. Because justice handed to you isn't justice earned. I wanted them to confess, not under threat, but under collapse. The turning point. By late 2022, Nova had become one of the top 5 predictive real estate platforms in California. Ironically, most of our clients were companies trying to fix the same mistakes that destroyed the Carter Group. One of my newest clients was Lindholm Partners, the very firm that had once backed my brother. They didn't know who owned Nova. I'd kept my identity buried behind an investment trust, until that day in the boardroom. Gregory walked in, looking older, thinner. His confidence cracked. He was pitching to them again, desperate for refinancing. He didn't see me at first sitting across the table, but when he did, the silence was perfect. His voice faltered. Brad, what the hell are you doing here? Just listening, I said. We like to invest in recovery projects. He looked at the executives, then at me. You can't do this. Can't I? You taught me that business is survival. The meeting ended early. The deal died on the spot. And for the first time, Gregory realized he wasn't just losing money. He was losing control. The calm before. That night, I walked along the Embarcadero, the city lights shimmering like ghosts on the water. Revenge wasn't supposed to feel this calm. I wasn't angry anymore, just aware. Every step, every move, every truth I uncovered. It wasn't about destroying them. It was about reclaiming the version of me they erased. I looked out at the Bay Bridge, bright, endless, and whispered, it's almost time. The echo of lies, based on a true story. People say truth sets you free, but that's not true. Truth doesn't free you. It changes your prison. It turns bars into mirrors, so that every lie you ever told stares back until you can't breathe. The sound of panic. 3 days after the failed meeting with Lindholm Partners, I started hearing the first cracks. One of my contacts in Santa Barbara called late at night. Brad, you might want to see this. Gregory's company just suspended trading. Something about internal fraud investigations. I didn't reply. I just sat there listening to the static of the phone line, like a storm building miles away. The Carter Group was rotting from within exactly as planned. But what came next wasn't business. It was personal. Because it wasn't enough that they lost money. They needed to lose the illusion that lies could protect them. The letter in the dark. I received another anonymous email the next morning. Same sender. No name, no address. Just one sentence. You're not the only one who knows the truth. Attached was a photo of Elena, entering the law firm of Rowe and Partners Dennis Rowe's office. Time-stamped 3 weeks before my father's death. There was also a scanned bank transfer record, $250,000 from a Cayman account under her name to Rowe's firm. Memo line, consulting retainer. I stared at the screen for a long time. That payment. That's how much it costs to erase a man's legacy. But what caught my attention wasn't the money. It was the date. Because the same week that payment went through, my father had suffered his second stroke. I remember sitting beside him in that hospital room, holding his hand, as machines beeped around us, while she was paying someone to steal his name. The anger didn't come like a wave. It came like a tide, slow, relentless, patient. I forwarded the files to Maya. Her reply came within minutes. You ready to make this public? I typed back. Not yet. We do it my way. The ghost will. With Maya's help, I contacted Evelyn Shaw, a former notary, who had retired to Palm Springs. She had witnessed my father's real will, the one dated January 14th, the one that made me heir. She was reluctant at first, afraid of being dragged into family wars. But when I drove down to see her, she opened the door and gasped. You look just like him, she whispered. Your father. Her hands trembled as she handed me a folder. Inside were copies of the notarized pages, original signatures, medical clearance forms, and the witness record. It was all there. Everything I needed to prove that the March will was fake. Why didn't you come forward, I asked. Because that woman, Elena, came after me. Said she'd sue me for defamation if I said anything. I nodded. She can't hurt you anymore. That was the first time I said it out loud. And I meant it. The courtroom plan. By early spring, my lawyer friend, Darren Klein, filed a motion in Santa Barbara County Probate Court. Brad Carter vs. the estate of Raymond Carter. The claim, forgery, fraud, and coercion. It wasn't just a lawsuit. It was a mirror. Gregory and Elena couldn't ignore it. If they fought it, they'd have to open every record, every signature, every bank account. If they ignored it, they'd look guilty. I knew what they'd do. Deny, delay, deflect. But I also knew something else. Truth once filed in court becomes public record, and public record becomes news. Media firestorm. 2 weeks later, the first headline hit. Carter family heir alleges forgery in $9.8 million will. Within hours, it was everywhere. The Los Angeles Times, CNBC online forums. The press loved it. Old money, betrayal, a forged inheritance. Elena hated the spotlight. Gregory thrived on it, until the questions got too sharp. Mr. Carter, can you confirm whether your father was conscious when the will was signed? Did your wife manage any financial transactions related to the estate? Is it true your brother's company now owns your old investors? They stopped appearing in public after that. The empire of silence they'd built was cracking under the noise of truth. The dinner trap. A week later, I received a message from Gregory. It was unexpected. No anger this time. Just desperation. Meet me. One last time. No lawyers, no cameras. I agreed. We met at a restaurant near the coast. The same one our father used to take us to as kids. He arrived first. No Elena. Just him. He looked smaller. Not physically, but spiritually. The arrogance was gone. Brad, listen, he said, his voice low. We can fix this. Settle it quietly. Quietly, I repeated. Like you forged Dad's will quietly. He flinched. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You couldn't stand that he trusted me more. You wanted control, and she wanted luxury, and both of you thought you could bury me with paperwork. He leaned forward. You think this makes you better than us? You're destroying the family name. I smiled, small, calm. No, Greg. I'm saving it. You destroyed it the day you sold Dad's integrity for a house with ocean views. He went silent. For a moment I saw guilt flicker in his eyes, then pride drowned it. He stood up and left without finishing his drink. The leak. That night, someone leaked the audio recording of that dinner. Yes, I'd recorded it. Not for court, but for perception. When Gregory said, "You're destroying the family name," it became a meme. When I said, "You sold Dad's integrity for a house with ocean views," it became a headline. Social media tore them apart. Elena's brand endorsements dropped overnight. Gregory's partners pulled out. By summer, the Carter Group filed for bankruptcy protection. Their empire forged on lies was melting exactly as I'd predicted. The face behind the curtain. But revenge never ends where you expect it to. Because the night their company collapsed, I received another message from the same anonymous sender. "You've done well, but you're still missing one truth." Attached was a video file. It showed Elena sitting in a car talking to someone. The timestamp was from 2 years ago, a week before my father's stroke. Her voice was clear. "Make it look natural. He's old. A fall, maybe. Just enough to get him back in the hospital. Once he's there, I'll handle the rest." My blood turned to ice. I played it again. And again. She was talking to someone off-screen. A man's voice too faint to identify. It wasn't just about money. They hadn't just forged his will. They'd engineered his death. Breaking point. I didn't sleep for 2 days. Every breath felt heavy, every memory like a wound. I wanted to send that video to the police to burn them alive with the truth. But then I remembered my father's words. "Don't let hate make you small, son. Fix what's broken. Don't become it." So I didn't act out of rage. I acted out of clarity. I hired a former FBI forensic analyst, Jordan Miles, to authenticate the video. He confirmed it was real. No edits, no deepfake markers. It was enough to open a homicide investigation. But I didn't go to the police first. I sent one copy, encrypted, directly to Elena's personal email. No words, just the file, the confession. 3 days later, I received a call from an unknown number. It was her. "Brad," her voice trembled. "Please, don't do this." "You already did," I said. "Gregory doesn't know. He thought it was just about the will. Please, he can't find out. He'll kill me." I stayed silent. "You want the money? Take it all. I'll transfer everything. Just, please, don't send it to the cops." "You think this is about money?" I asked. "You killed the only man who ever believed in both of us." She started crying. Not the loud, manipulative kind, but the sound of someone realizing their story is over. When I hung up, I didn't feel victory. Just quiet. The kind that burns. The collapse. The next morning, news broke. Elena Carter found dead in apparent overdose. Gregory was hospitalized for shock. The police reopened the case of my father's death. I was called in for questioning, but I told them the truth. All of it. The forged will, the blackmail, the video. When I left the station, a reporter asked, "Mr. Carter, do you feel justice was served?" I stopped, looked into the camera and said, "Justice isn't something you feel. It's something you outlive." The echo. Months passed. The case closed. Gregory moved away. Somewhere quiet, somewhere without mirrors. He sold what was left of his company for scraps. I didn't see him again. Sometimes I drive past our father's old house, now empty, sold to strangers. I don't stop. I don't need to. Because revenge wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of understanding that peace isn't what you win. It's what you build once you stop fighting. They say revenge tastes sweet. But no one tells you what happens after the sweetness fades, when you realize you've been swallowing poison drop by drop just to watch someone else die. After the fire, the police called it an accidental overdose. The coroner called it probable suicide. But I called it what it was. The sound of an empire collapsing under the weight of its own sins. Elena Carter was gone, and Gregory was a ghost who hadn't realized he was dead yet. For weeks I didn't hear from him. I didn't want to. Los Angeles was colder than usual that spring. Even the air seemed to hold its breath, waiting for me to decide what kind of man I'd become now that there was no one left to fight. The case against the forged will ended quietly. The court declared the March will invalid. The January will, my father's real one, was reinstated. $9,800,000. That was the number everyone kept talking about. Lawyers, reporters, even friends who hadn't spoken to me in years. But no one asked about the number that mattered more. 3. 3 people dead in spirit or body. My father, Elena, Gregory, and me. Because you don't survive something like this intact. You just keep breathing. The return to silence. When the estate lawyer handed me the keys to the old Carter house in Santa Monica, I didn't go inside right away. The front porch creaked the same way it did when I was a kid sneaking out past curfew. The salt wind carried the smell of jasmine, my mother's favorite. Everything was the same, except the laughter was gone. Inside, the walls still held our photographs, frozen versions of people who no longer existed. Gregory and I on the pier holding fishing rods. Mom and Dad dancing in the living room. All those smiles, lies we didn't know we were telling. I sat in my father's study. The chair still leaned slightly to the left, like it used to when he worked late nights. On the desk lay an old fountain pen capped waiting. And for the first time in years, I whispered, "I did it, Dad," but the words didn't sound like victory. They sounded like confession. The interview. A month later, a journalist from the Los Angeles Chronicle requested an interview. She said she wanted to tell the story behind the story. Against better judgment, I agreed. Her name was Clara Vance. Mid-30s, sharp calm with eyes that saw through performance. We met at a cafe near the courthouse. She turned on her recorder and said, "I don't want headlines. I want truth." I nodded. "Tell me," she said, "was it worth it?" I looked out the window, at people laughing, living lives that weren't on fire. It depends what you mean by worth. If you mean money, yes. If you mean peace, no. She leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Revenge doesn't give peace. It gives clarity. And clarity hurts more than lies." She paused, then asked the one question I didn't expect. "Do you forgive them?" It was a simple question, but it hit like a bullet. I thought about Elena, the fear in her voice the last time we spoke. About Gregory, sitting alone in some hospital room, the walls closing in. "I don't know," I finally said. "Maybe forgiveness isn't something you give. Maybe it's something you outgrow." Clara turned off the recorder. We sat in silence. Then she said softly, "You sound like a man who's still bleeding." I smiled faintly. "You can't lose your family twice and stay whole." Gregory's ghost. One evening I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. But I knew the handwriting instantly. "Brad, you think you won. Maybe you did. But you don't understand what winning costs. Every night I see his face. Every morning I wish I hadn't woken up. She was the devil, but I was the fool who followed her into hell. Don't come looking for me. There's nothing left to find. G." I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer beside my father's pen. That was the last I ever heard from my brother. Sometimes I wondered if he meant it as apology or curse, maybe both. Inheritance of ashes. With the estate finalized, I had choices to make. Keep the money, expand the Carter name again, or dismantle everything, burn down the legacy that had destroyed us. I chose the latter. I sold every Carter property except the old house. I donated half of the inheritance to medical foundations researching stroke prevention in my father's name. The rest went into a trust for children of families destroyed by fraud and inheritance disputes. When my lawyer asked why I told him, "Because money cursed us. Maybe now it can buy someone else a chance to be free." He looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I was. But maybe being crazy is what you become when you've seen what greed can do to love. The whisper of peace. It took months before I could sleep without hearing my father's voice or Elena's confession. But healing, I learned, isn't a straight road. It's a slow climb out of fire. Maya, my confidant and co-conspirator through it all, visited me often. She never judged, never asked if I regretted anything. One night, sitting on the porch under the orange California dusk, she said, "You know, for a man who burned his family empire to the ground, you look almost calm." I smiled faintly. Maybe that's what happens when there's nothing left to lose. She took a sip of wine. Or maybe you finally won the right thing. What's that? I asked. Yourself. I didn't answer. But I think she was right. The documentary. 6 months later, Clara's article became a short documentary. The Carter Legacy, The Price of Blood. It aired on a local network and went viral within days. People called me a hero. Others called me ruthless. But none of them knew what it felt like to stand in the ruins of your own family and wonder if justice was just another form of loss. During the final scene, Clara narrated, Brad Carter didn't win because he exposed a crime. He won because he faced it and chose not to become it. When I heard that line, I turned off the TV. Because some truths don't belong on screens. They belong in silence. The letter that changed everything. One morning, nearly a year after it all ended, I received a letter from the district attorney's office. Inside was a note. Mr. Carter, we wanted you to know. The forensic investigation confirmed that the will alteration and related payments to Rowe and Partners were linked to a larger scheme, one that affected multiple estates. Your father's case helped us uncover it. Thank you. Attached was a list of names, families like mine robbed by the same hands. For the first time, I felt something like peace, because it meant my father's suffering hadn't been for nothing. The truth had finally done what it was meant to. Protect, not destroy. The last visit. One evening in August, I visited my father's grave in Santa Monica Cemetery. The sky was purple, the kind of color that only happens before the sun gives up for the day. I knelt, brushed off the dust from his name, and whispered, It's over, Dad. The house, the money, the lies, all gone. The wind moved gently through the trees as if listening. You were right, I said. Hate doesn't fix what's broken. It only teaches you how to break differently. I placed his old pen beside the headstone, the one he used to sign every contract, every promise. Then I walked away without looking back, because some goodbyes aren't about leaving. They're about finally arriving somewhere else. The Mirror. A few months later, I sold the Carter house. The new owners were a young couple, teachers, modest, hopeful. They asked if I wanted to leave anything behind. I left one thing, a framed quote that hung in my father's study. It read, Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you refuse to take with you. I didn't take the frame. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in years, the reflection in the mirror looked like someone I could live with. The epilogue of Fire. I still dream about them sometimes. Gregory standing by the ocean, his face blurred by fog. Elena sitting across the dinner table, her glass untouched. And my father, watching us both silently disappointed, endlessly patient. When I wake up, I don't feel anger anymore. Just the echo of what used to be. And the peace of what finally is. Because the truth doesn't set you free. It burns everything that's not real, until only freedom is left. And in those ashes, I built something new, my own inheritance. The silence that followed. They don't tell you what happens after revenge. After the courtroom empties, the names fade from the news, and the money sits quietly in your account. They don't tell you that silence is louder than screams. A year had passed since the verdict. I had sold the Carter estate. The company shares the oceanfront house. All that remained was a quiet apartment overlooking downtown San Francisco, high enough to see the fog roll in from the bay, far enough to pretend the past was another city. I told myself I was done fighting ghosts, done replaying the betrayal, done pretending I could rebuild something from ashes. But peace, I learned, doesn't arrive as a storm or a miracle. It arrives like a whisper. And sometimes it sounds like your father's voice. 2. The unexpected visitor. It was a Tuesday morning when my doorbell rang. The kind of morning where the air smells of coffee and the world feels temporarily kind. When I opened the door, a man in his 60s stood there. Suit too formal for his age, eyes sharp with the fatigue of someone who had seen too many wills, too many secrets. Mr. Carter, he asked. Yes, my name is Alan Pierce. I was your father's personal financial advisor before his passing. I believe we need to talk. He handed me a small brown envelope. Inside was a letter sealed with wax. My father's initials, J.W.C. Alan continued. Your father asked me to deliver this a year after his estate was settled. He said, if you made it this far, you deserved the truth. The truth. The one word I had spent 2 years chasing and destroying people over. Now it was waiting for me in my own hands. 3. The letter. I waited until he left. Then I sat at the kitchen table staring at the envelope like it was radioactive. When I finally opened it, my father's handwriting greeted me. Uneven, warm, unmistakably his. My son, if you're reading this, it means you survived. I never doubted you would. You were always the quiet one, the one who saw everything and said nothing. I used to fear that meant weakness. Now I know it meant strength. You probably think you know everything about what happened. But there's one thing I never told you, not because I didn't trust you, but because I wanted you to be free of it until you were ready. The money, the 9.8 million, wasn't mine alone. Half of it belonged to someone else. Someone I hurt. Her name was Lily Morgan, your mother's closest friend. I made a mistake that changed her life, and when she died, I promised I'd make it right. That's what the trust was for. But Gregory and Elena never knew. They saw only numbers, not promises. If you wish to finish what I started, Alan will show you where the rest lies. If not, destroy this letter. The choice finally is yours. Dad, my hands trembled slightly as I folded the letter. Not from anger, from recognition. For the first time I realized my father wasn't the man I had imagined. He wasn't just a victim of fraud. He was a man who carried his own guilt, his own quiet revenge against himself. 4. The account. Alan returned the next day. He placed a file on my table labeled Morgan Trust, Confidential. Inside were documents showing a hidden account untouched for over a decade containing roughly $4.9 million. The other half of the estate. The beneficiary, Lily Morgan's daughter, Claire. I stared at the name for a long time. I had never heard of her. But according to the papers, she lived in San Diego and had no idea this money existed. He asked me not to contact her unless you approved, Alan said. He wanted you to decide whether to let the past rest or repair it. I laughed quietly. Repair. After all this, there's nothing left to repair. Alan smiled faintly, gathering his things. Then maybe you'll find there's something left to heal. 5. The decision. For days I didn't do anything. I just walked the city, from the Embarcadero to Golden Gate Park, trying to understand what my father had asked of me. Forgiveness, after all, isn't a switch. It's a negotiation with your own pain. Then, one afternoon, I found myself standing in front of a small cafe in San Diego. Through the glass window, I saw her. Claire Morgan. Late 20s hair the color of autumn, typing on a laptop. She looked like any other person who hadn't been haunted by money or betrayal. I didn't know what I expected to feel. Anger, resentment. Instead, I felt relief. Because she was living the life my family had lost. Simple, ordinary, peaceful. I went inside, ordered a coffee. When she looked up, I introduced myself. Hi, I said. My name is Brad Carter. I think our fathers once knew each other. We talked for hours. About nothing and everything. She told me she worked with a nonprofit, helping families recover from financial scams. I didn't tell her about the inheritance right away. I just listened. For the first time in years, listening didn't feel like a weapon. It felt like redemption. 6. The gift. A week later, I met her again. This time I brought the papers. I need to show you something, I said, sliding the file across the table. This belonged to my father. Half of it belongs to you. She looked confused. I think you've made a mistake. I shook my head. No, he did. I'm just fixing it. When she realized what it was, the trust fund, the letter, the proof, she covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. Why are you doing this? Because revenge ends where forgiveness begins, I said quietly. And maybe this is how I forgive him. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then you're a better man than your father. I smiled faintly. No. I'm just his son trying to clean the mess he left behind. 7. The last goodbye. Months later, after transferring the trust to Claire, I returned once more to Santa Monica. The Carter name was gone from the news, the court records, the property deeds. It was as if we had never existed. I visited the ocean where my father used to take us fishing. The waves were calm, the same yet entirely different. You were right, Dad, I whispered. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you make right before it's too late. The tide rose slowly, touching my shoes. It felt like an answer. 8. 1 year later, I live quietly now. I teach business ethics at a community college. Students think I'm just another professor who talks too much about moral responsibility in finance. They don't know my story. I don't tell it. Sometimes I get letters from Claire. She's happy. She's doing good work. She signs each one the same way, for what it's worth. Thank you for finishing what your father started. I keep those letters in the same drawer as my father's pen, because both remind me that redemption isn't found in justice. It's found in choice. 9. The twist of legacy. Last month, Alan called again. He said something curious. Brad, while closing the remaining accounts, we found one more, small, barely $10,000, under your father's name. He labeled it, Brad, Final Lesson. I thought you'd want to see it. Inside the envelope was a note and a single check. The note read, My son, if you're reading this, you've already done more than I ever did right. The money isn't a gift. It's a seed, planted in something that outlives both of us. Love, Dad. I stared at it for a long time. Then I tore up the check. Some things aren't meant to be inherited. They're meant to be released. 10. The calm. It's been 2 years since everything ended. I still have nightmares sometimes, of courtrooms, arguments, signatures, lies. But the mornings are peaceful now. Maya visits sometimes, bringing coffee and that quiet smile that says you made it. So she said one morning, No regrets plenty, I replied. But not the kind that keep you awake. She laughed softly. You really did the impossible, Brad. What's that? You turned revenge into mercy. I looked out at the city, bathed in morning light, the fog lifting just enough to see the horizon. Maybe that's the only way to survive it, I said. You destroy the hate before it destroys you. Epilogue. I still visit my father's grave once a year. I bring 2 things, a white rose and a letter I never send. In it, I write the same line every time. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I do. Then I walk away, the sea breeze carrying the scent of salt and closure. Because some stories don't end with victory. They end with understanding. And maybe that's the real inheritance my father left me. Not the money, not the house, not the name, but the calm after vengeance. I'm Booze, N, and these are real stories, told by those who lived them. Subscribe if you're ready for the next truth. If this story made you think twice, hit that subscribe button. The next one might just break you. Thanks for staying till the end. Every week I uncover another story the world tried to forget.